My name is Michael Aller, and I still don't understand Dark Souls. So if you're watching this video, it's because you've been linked to it, and I want some help in understanding Poise. Now, I'm still pretty new to all this Dark Souls stuff, but I am determined to learn it, and part of my problem with learning this stuff is that there's so many routes about things like you have to count 7 hits with this weapon under these circumstances with this stats with this level and all this stuff, and it's hard for me to kind of come up with my own route information and my own guide to do this, because the information's kind of everywhere and it's kind of pieced together from stuff, and I wanted a way to kind of understand some of the more fundamental parts of why people are choosing what and how they come to these decisions as how to hit things. And it seems like a big part of that is based around poise, right? So there's a lot of stuff around staggering, and staggering, from the loosest definition, the loosest but most straightforward definition I can assign to it is when an enemy's poise health drops from a non-zero value to 0 or less. It's kind of an annoying way to say it, but as a software engineer, it helps me think of these things in those terms and kind of define rules around all these things. So it seems like the general idea with Vordt, if you were to adapt my last video and to adapt some of the stuff that's already around on how to kill Vordt, it's sort of based off a very simple principle in that Vordt has a phase 2, so to speak, after he does a transition move once he reaches 800 health. And the idea of poise management with him is that you want to do as much damage during that transitional phase without causing a stagger, or what I'll refer to as a poise break, I guess. And that way, when you do get the stagger, you can do as much damage as possible before that, and without interrupting the chain of events with that stagger. So I've added a poise meter on the right that allows me to see poise for targeted enemies. And I'm not sure if this is entirely accurate. I don't really know much about poise mechanics, but from my understanding, what it looks like is, and this is based off of some reading and stuff, every enemy, including yourself, every entity, if you will, has a concept of super armor, which is what they call it internally, and this can be assigned any random value. For the player, it's 100. For enemies, it varies. I believe Gundyr has a poise of 180, Vordt has a poise of 200. I couldn't find a good resource for these numbers, so I don't know how they stack up against other data. If anyone watching this has any ideas, any data tables for poise numbers, I'd love to have those if you can provide those. And also the amount of poise damage you do based on your weapon depends on a lot of factors. For example, a one-hand club hit does 25 damage, 25 poise damage. A two-hand hit does, what is that, 33. So it's doing double plus a percentage, which is interesting. I'm not sure how that's calculated. So there's any way to calculate that damage based on weapon stats, or if there's a calculation that somebody knows, I'd love to know more about that, so that I know how to distinguish one weapon from the next in regards to poise without manually, just trying out every weapon and trying out all the modifiers. I know that there's some diminishing return formula for poise, but it's hard to say how stats get involved. So again, really, I'm just asking for any information if anyone knows anything about this, and as well as confirmation as whether or not my thinking behind these things is correct. And so with all this in mind, with knowing that Vordt has 200 poise, it seems to be that everything I've tested so far, if you don't hit them if you don't hit an enemy for 10 seconds, their poise resets back to full, which is pretty simple. So if you feel like you're going to stagger something and you don't want to stagger it, you just run away and don't hit them for 10 seconds. I think that's pretty simple to understand. Now with Vordt, he gets into his angry phase once he has the freedom to choose his next action if he has less than 800 health. At least that's what seems to be the case. So my understanding of what an optimal Vordt kill would be, with all this information currently in mind, is that you want to get him as close to 800 health as possible, without going below that. So here I have him at 806 health, and he's still in his first phase. Now, if I hit him one more time and he drops below 800, the next time he chooses his attack, he will do his phase 2 transition, where he does his roar and does his runaround. And it's very important that we don't stagger or we don't poise break him during that transition, because otherwise it changes his animation set and we won't get the actual stagger and the good damage later on. But if you're able to hit this 800 health line, and then if you start your attack on him, you start willing on him while he's mid attack, that maximizes the amount of time before his transition, because once he is below 800 health, it appears that damage is not a factor in his attack move. It's only if he gets stunned or poise broken after he reaches that threshold. So I know I'm a bit rambling here, but I just really want to confirm all these tiny details with somebody if possible. And so the thinking is the optimal strat, you get him to 800 health, and then so I messed up there, but the idea is that you start willing on him during an attack so he doesn't immediately go into that transition phase. And then you hit him, and then you kill him. So I'll try to run that back with a lot less rambling, a lot less talking. But I believe my understanding of poise is correct in that this mechanic, this staggered how poise works, is the same across most enemies, if not all of them. And anytime you want to reset poise, you just have to back off for 10 seconds. If anyone knows any bosses that have a different timing, that would be great to know. Also, if anyone has any data on poise damage outputs for weapons and how different stats affect those, I'd love to hear it, because right now I don't know any of that. So here his poise will go to 0, we'll see him get stunned there, and poise immediately resets as soon as it's broken. So I've got him to 833 health here. If I hit him one more time with the club, it'll drop him below 800, and I don't want to do that. So I'll wait for his poise to go back up, which it just did. So now I'll wait for him to get into a combo attack, so I have some time to wail on him. Right, like this. And as long as I watch my poise, so I've done a lot of damage there, but I did not stun him. He's got 5 poise left. Oops. And the idea is that, at least I think the idea behind how everyone's optimizing these routes is they want to ride that line as best as possible. The most damage output for least amount of poise output. So that begs another question. Do different weapons have different ratios of damage to poise damage? And the answer is yes, but to what degree, to what significance, and is there data surrounding that is easily accessible? Anyway, this is my exploration in the Poise and Vordt. Please let me know if any of my thoughts are incorrect or correct. Thank you.